you check the children? Show a little match sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes. That is what
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the horror show. I'm Cecil Laird.
You got Jaime and Fuego here.
That's right, we were able to nail down the man, the myth, the legend himself,
Not at
Fuego.
all.
He's just doing a lot of schoolwork right now, you guys.
It's
so
intensive, man.
it's been
Summer
tough to nail him
sessions and all.
down. Shout out to Robert, though, for stepping up in his stead to make sure we get all the coverage that you guys deserve. But we do want to make sure we bring we do want to make sure we bring Fuego back any chance that we get. And he did have a moment to go with me to see the advanced screening of Boogeyman, or The Boogeyman, I should say.
Boogeyman.
We ourselves did The Boogeyman short,
Indeed you did.
comedy sketch for the channel.
Yep, it was
Once
something
upon
I
a
saw
time.
before I even joined the channel. And I was like, this guy's got a great sense of humor. He's got vision, man.
Well, it just goes to show I've always been a fan of Boogeyman stories.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
One of my earliest parodies that we did on the channel was of a Boogeyman story.
And when you and I were first getting to know each other, we were talking about the Ghostbusters Boogeyman. And
yeah,
how
the
dope we
Ghostbusters
thought that
Boogeyman
was,
with
man.
the goat legs
Yeah.
and like that
Going in
cool
the-
world inside with
all the
all
doors.
the connected
Yeah.
closets and everything. Absolutely love that shit. So I have been, unfortunately, repeatedly disappointed by Boogeyman movies over the years.
I remember there was the one with Dude from Seventh Heaven in it that
Yeah,
came out.
the
and-
first Boogeyman
yeah,
movie, and it
yeah.
was a bummer because it ended up, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, based on what you told me about the Boogeyman Stephen King story, I
Which this
believe
is.
it ended more like that than this movie was. And I will say, to me, Boogeyman 2 was the best of all the Boogeyman movies because
That's
it
right, because
actually was a boogeyman and a scary thing inside the closet and under the bed. This is that Boogeyman story, but told, I thought, through a Stephen King prism. Right? When we did the trailer reactions for this, Fuego pointed out, yeah, this is based on like a 15-page Stephen King short story in the Night Shift book. Okay? But the trailers that we watched portrayed a really cool, supernatural-looking boogeyman creature stalking this family, and I was all about it for both of the trailers that we saw. I think we did 2 trailer reactions. Might have just been 1. Either way, I remembered being completely on board. And we finally got to see this movie, and I don't know how Fuego felt about it ultimately, so we try not to talk about it until we sit down to do the review. But I'm going to start with my overall thoughts and say that
Please do.
I absolutely loved this film. I didn't love it on the level that I do certain emotional horror movies, but this to me is an excellent example of what a lot of horror movies try to do. So this is the supernatural presence in the house. You know, it's a lot of stuff that we have seen before to varying capacities. This movie just does it all very, very well, in my opinion. All the way down to the CG creature, which, again, they show that there's a creature in the trailers, so not spoiling anything there. I really had a really good time with this movie, and I will say, unashamedly, it scared the shit out of me numerous times. Fuego was right there. Fuego, have you heard me scream as much as you heard me scream in this movie in quite a while?
It's been a hot minute, yeah, for sure, man.
I was like literally like, Jesus Christ, like, oh my God, like I at one point I literally
got me, though,
I cowered into my seat a little bit because I was like, that felt pretty loud. Like, I don't know, man. This movie got me numerous times, so it was really well done with the scares. And the director, who directed it again?
Directed by Rob Savage. So this is the interesting aspect about him is that his previous 2 films, one was very well celebrated, another one was a lot more divisive. But he comes from
loved one, hated the other.
Yeah. So he comes from like the found footagey sort of camp. He made his name during the pandemic with Host.
That amazing laptop.
Yeah.
You know, Skype. Essentially, the Zoom movie,
Yeah,
the
so
Zoom
it's not
horror movie.
quite found footage. That's a different.
Well, no, it
genre-ish.
qualifies. It
Does
qualifies.
Okay,
Yeah. I would say it qualifies.
Yeah,
that movie was phenomenal. Dashcam also found footage. To me, didn't live up to
more traditional found footage. Yeah.
Yeah, more traditional found footage, but with one of the
whatever.
most detestable main characters I've ever seen.
You're not supposed
in
to like
all
her.
of cinema.
I
yeah,
was
but that didn't.
by that movie,
I
man.
couldn't get through it. I mean, I did get through it, but I couldn't get with the main character in any way, shape, or form.
Oh, she's a wretch, but she's
She's a wretch.
She was amusing.
So knowing that, Actually, I don't. I think Fuego mentioned it in passing before the movie, but it didn't fully register until afterwards because this, to me, showed Savage's non-found footage prowess. Like, I thought he did a fantastic job directing this film.
That's what I said to Patrick when we were leaving. I was like, he has graduated to and elevating his craft and showing that he's not just a gimmicky sort of director, that he can really spread his wings and make something.
Host was sold to Netflix, right? From a.
Was it Netflix or was it Shudder? I can't remember. I know it was a
Shudder or
streamer
Netflix?
of some sort.
I can't remember. Yeah, it was either Shudder or Netflix. But either way,
But
it
was
had
a
to have
big
come from a
breakout
film
hit.
festival, right?
It was a big breakout hit. He made it for like 20,000. Well, I mean, whatever the pound equivalent is, because he's a British director.
Right.
But yeah, and
But then they welcomed him to do Dash Cam,
and then after that he signed a first look deal, and here's the beginning of that.
this.
So,
I mean,
yeah.
and this was like honestly, if this had to be your quote unquote studio calling card, what a fucking wonderful calling card to have.
Yeah.
So. We'll break this movie down like we normally do, but I mean, I am overwhelmingly positive about this because I just had a really positive experience at the theater, and I love to revel in that when I can. So, story-wise, Fuego,
well,
let's talk about
overall
that
impressions
first.
from me.
Oh yeah, I apologize.
No, you're good. You're good.
My bad.
So the thing is with this film, I'm kind of torn because
the guy that knows the material.
I'm of two minds about this because so not only am I extremely familiar having read the short story countless times, but I've seen various dollar baby adaptations of this. I mean, this was one of the very first that was made in the 80s when you had Disciples of the Crow, you had The Woman in the Room, which Frank Darabont directed, and then you had this. So those were the original $3 babies that had a little bit of a budget behind them, and it's not a great adaptation, but it's very true to the material of a guy going in, sitting down with a therapist, and talking about the demise of his children and how he's being blamed for the situation. So being very familiar with the source material, you go into this and I will say without spoiling things that if you're a big fan of the short story, this is beyond another turn of the wheel. This is more along the equivalent, I was telling Cecil before we started filming, of like when The Lawnmower Man was so little like the short story that Cy King got mad and had his name taken off of it. I guess Steve has softened in his old age because this is pretty much nothing.
Well, this is a great version of what that story could have been were it to be expanded. Again, it's 15 pages.
It's a very simple story, and that's the thing. I'm not the hugest fan of the short story, so I'm not beholden to the source material, and for that reason, like, as a Stephen King adaptation, it doesn't work at all. But as something that is very much in its own, just pivoting and doing its own different thing. The acting was great from our two sibling sisters. They were awesome. And Rob Savage, as I was saying, like from a stylistic standpoint, this shows so much about what he could do with material in the future. And the fact that he has that first look deal, you're going to get more Savage coming soon, man. And yeah, bring that shizzle on, because this was, despite the familiarity of a lot of aspects of it, which we'll get into with, you know, some story bits and whatnot, but I was pretty impressed with this movie as being its own thing. So, yeah.
If you guys liked the movie Come Play, like I liked that movie, this is very similar as far as, you know, CG antagonist creature, but a well-made and well-drawn family dynamic. You're going to enjoy this movie. I loved Come Play, and I really enjoyed this too.
Yeah.
Like this, Come Play, I cried at the end. For sure. This one, I
with
teared
the mom
up.
who was from Community?
Yeah,
I want to say.
yep,
Yeah.
Gillian
I forget
Anderson.
the name of the actress.
Gillian Anderson.
Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, I absolutely. I enjoyed this movie, and I enjoyed the characters. I actually bought into the story. I cared about the characters.
Yeah,
Granted, I'm a father now, and this is a movie about a creature that likes to take and eat, ultimately, kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's a very scary premise when presented correctly. And I will say, the opening scene for this movie, when the thing happens that happens, I went. Like I caught, like
everybody in the theater did.
So many people did, but like I was only paying attention to me, and my breath caught in my throat, and I was like, "Oh fuck!" Like it's gonna be like that.
Yeah.
And this was a PG-13 movie.
It definitely pushed the limits of the rating, which I appreciate.
It did, well, it did and it didn't. Like it's not super gory.
Yeah.
It's not super gory.
But as far as like
scare wise, It's an intense movie,
It
dude.
is. It is.
Like some 12, I guarantee
And that's
11,
what I mean
12,
by
13
pushing
year
the
olds,
limits of
they're
it.
going to have nightmares about this fucking creature.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so we talked about the overall thoughts.
Yeah.
Story-wise.
Story is fairly simple.
Yeah, why don't
honestly.
you hit that?
Yeah, so you essentially have a family whose mother was lost in a car accident, and so father is left to
And
pick
two
up
daughters.
the pieces with his two daughters. So I forget the name of the actress from Yellow Jackets, but she's the
older one?
Yep. Well, she's the older sister here. She's got the bleached hair in the show. She's the younger counterpart of anyway. So yeah, she is a standout in this. We'll get to that in acting, and so it's her and her younger sister Sawyer. Sophie and Sawyer, I believe their name.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, okay. But so yeah, they're dealing with the grief of this recent
It
loss.
might not be Sophie, but it's
Maybe
close.
it's not. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
Sadie, maybe something
Sadie,
like that.
Sadie, yes.
It was Sadie. Okay.
Yep. It was two S's, Sadie and Sawyer. But so yeah, the father, ironically, is a therapist, which is a nod to the original short story. But keep in mind, that's another turn of the wheel, everybody. So but so they're dealing with this grief, and all of a sudden, you have a mysterious person by the name of Lester Billings that shows up at the home office.
Played by Dave
father.
DeSmalchin.
Yep.
Of anything that you want to see. He was in the Christopher Nolan Batman movies. He was Polka Dot Man in the Suicide Squad.
He was part of the heist crew in Ant-Man.
Yep, he is part of the heist crew in Ant-Man. Yep, this is the work of gypsies. Yeah, so
good.
Dave DeSmalchin has
also
been
hosts
in
the
loads of
Chainsaw
different
Awards
things.
for Fangoria.
Oh, he's been in other actual real movies too. You know what I mean?
I know, but for the horror.
No, I know. I'm just
contingent.
saying, absolutely. So tremendous actor,
Yeah.
and again, showing even a further dimension in this. I've never seen him play a character quite like this.
Quite as tortured.
Super intense.
Yes, big time. You can
Super
see it in
intense,
the eyes
and the bags under the eyes that betray. Like he basically walked out of a Nightmare on Elm Street movie.
Yeah.
Trying
Agreed,
to
man.
stay awake
Yes.
or stay alive at the nighttime. You know what I mean?
Indeed. And so he shows up and he starts basically retelling, and this is where we have the connectivity with the original short story. He starts retelling the fact that
this 10
this
minute
tiny
scene,
little
this 10 minute scene
this is why
told
I said,
the story
this
of the
is why
book.
I was like, King endorses this on Twitter, and yet
Well,
he
but
was like,
why wouldn't you when it's such a quality movie that
Because of
just
the fact that
built
it's-
on your material?
I like the lawnmower man, okay?
I did too. I did too. But this literally, this is like, okay, well, what if you had to tell the full length story? Are you going to tell
It's
the full length
so-
story
it's
of that, or are you going to do the
so-
more interesting version?
It's so different, yeah. But so yeah, he starts to retell the fact that all three of his children died within the span of a year in mysterious circumstances, and that he has been kind of blamed for it, and he can't figure out how to come to grips with all of this shit. His wife is played by Marina Ireland, actually, who always seems to play these tortured, kind of twitchy
Dude,
characters.
if you want a fucked up, like a woman that has gone through the ringer, and especially if you want to put her in the Old West for whatever reason, like I feel like
I can see that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like she would work. She feels
hasn't
like she
been in
kind
a
of
Western,
walked out
yeah.
of Deadwood,
Yeah.
even though she wasn't in Deadwood or The Wind.
Yeah.
I feel like she could have very easily been in The Wind. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
but yeah, she is totally believably tortured.
Yeah. And so, Lester shows up, played by DeSmalchin, that we mentioned, and he recants his story. The father of the two recounts his story. Yeah,
Recants would be taking it back.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, rightfully so. But so he retells what transpired, and it's graphic, it's messed up, and then his character proceeds to kind of freak out at the house, and this is happening parallel to the Sadie's character, the older sister's return to school, and how she's having trouble adjusting to how nobody knows how to approach her about the grieving process and how to.
Well, she doesn't even know how to approach it herself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how much more awkward would it not be for those around her, and including her best friend too, and just trying to figure out how to connect with her once again. And DeSmalchin's character Billings freaks out, and that is the catalyst for almost a transference of what had been tormenting his family to a new family. And so yes, we've seen that sort of thing in stories many times lately, whether Smile or It Follows or whatever else. So
the passing
that's
of a curse, so to speak.
Yeah, and so that's where people could be like, oh, this movie is full of tropes and all this different stuff. You got some lights out in here. You've got So
this is not what you'd call an original story. This is
about
just
adept execution, though.
Perfectly put.
Yeah.
Adept execution, exemplary version of these things that we've seen in other movies. It's like when we've talked about other movies that haven't worked as well, where we're like, well,
Yeah.
other movies have done it better.
Yeah.
This is that movie that
Exactly.
we're talking about
Yeah.
that did all of those things better.
Mhm.
Like, that's
Agreed.
literally the best way to kind of put it when you look at it compared to what we talk about otherwise.
Yeah.
This movie, story-wise, is very simple, and yet it's carried out with such aplomb that, like, I was engaged the whole way. I never felt it dragged. Like, how long is this movie? It's got to be short and sweet,
It's
right?
it's a little over 90 minutes. I want to say 1:38. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so
Hour,
yeah, an
38
hour
minutes,
38,
yeah.
right, not
Yeah.
138 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry.
138, and yeah, because we walked out and it was like 8:35.
It was briskly paced.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and but that works
That's the sweet
so
spot
well.
with horror, as
well,
we've talked about
a lot of times,
often,
like
often.
horror like this,
Mhm.
horror that's not meant to, you know, really dive into the emotions and let you live in it for a certain amount of time. This isn't your A24 movie.
Yeah. It's
This-
not from
this-
Black.
No, this is closer to, you know, fucking Darkness Falls from the 90s. You know what I mean? It's or the
dare
2000s.
and dare I say, this had kind of an early 2000s.
I agree.
horror
Yeah, well,
vibe
that's
to it.
I guess Darkness Falls would be the early 2000s more than 90s. But yeah, that's why I bring that up. Yeah,
Yeah.
early 2000s horror vibes.
That was the.
But it just
Tooth
did it
Fairy one,
so
I wanna
well.
say?
Yeah, the Tooth Fairy one. I love. Again, I like stories about, you know, creatures that we've heard about. The Boogeyman, the Tooth Fairy. You know, like, give me more horror like that, because when it's executed like this, I'm all about it. And let's talk about that execution even before we get into acting, right? Because the guy went from two essentially found footage movies to
Very low budget.
low budget found footage movies to a moderately budgeted studio film where
'cause
he
this is
did
20th
such a
Century
great job. Yeah,
Studios.
20th Century Studios. The angles, again, credit to the cinematographer for executing, but you have to imagine the director had a vision, right? And there's sequences, again, in this movie that we've seen dozens of times in other horror movies. A little girl in bed, scared of something coming out of the closet. We've seen this so many times.
Dozens,
but it's
if not
how
hundreds.
it's executed. Are you engaged? Are you scared for the character? I was scared for the little girl every time.
And there's payoff too.
And like the first time, like they do, he subverts expectations for
Big
people
time.
that have seen movies like this, right? You're expecting it when you're expecting maybe a slow, creepy door opening. Suddenly there's a boom and like a quick slither, and you're
that's
like,
what you
Jesus,
have
what
to-
the fuck happened?
And that's what you have
Like it
to
keeps
do
you
in
off
these-
balance the
Yeah.
whole movie, and
Yeah.
I really dug how the filmmaking of this movie was approached. It
Agreed.
was so well done.
Yeah, and I mean, since we're kind of focusing on technical before getting
Yeah.
into acting, I loved the use of sound in this, and the use of lighting, and especially
Sound was
the,
incredible.
and especially the lack thereof, just to give that sense of ominous dread and everything. These bits of where just the littlest flicker of light gives that little revelation about what, like the bit with the video game, especially, I thought was pretty
Dude, that
cool.
was so well utilized. And
Yeah.
it was so cool because, like, yeah, the screen changes entirely, and it's just because of a creature passing by on the video. It was like, that's fucking really smart.
Yeah.
And I'm playing Tears of the Kingdom right now, and it's like
Is that what she was playing?
No, but she's playing a big open world game where stuff like that happens.
Oh, okay.
And it's like, it's really cool. But yeah, the fact that she was using like fire arrows to illuminate the room
Yeah,
to
it was
see
clever.
shit happening.
And those
Very
are the little,
clever,
those
very
are the
clever.
little touches that elevate this from being
Elevate.
just the tried and true. You know, you're like, as you said, you know, it's subverting expectations. Well, you're like, okay, I've seen this trope before, blah blah blah. But okay.
But
all
then
right.
how do they execute it? And then even when you have this whole absolutely nerve-wracking scene happen, this video game scene, and then it gets to a point where you're still like, Jesus Christ! Like, and that's what happens to me. Like, I think I raised my hands up at one point because, like, I was like,
You did.
dude, no, like, you know, like it's just the filmmaking was very well done. Again, a lot of people I feel like are going to call this generic, and I will say I watched Jeremy John's spoiler-free
There's
review
generic aspects
before
to it, but
watching.
once again, it's about,
And like he was a fan of the first third, and then he felt like it devolved into stuff we've seen before. And the thing is, I don't disagree with that.
I don't even.
But what I think is, and like we've talked about, it's an exemplary version of stuff we've seen before.
Yeah.
So I didn't mind that aspect of it because it was so well executed.
Yeah, me neither, man. And I mean, just the shift of cameras a lot of the time, and some of the quick edits that are done. I mean, these are things obviously that they're like tricks of the
Quick
trade that
edits
have been
and
around
drawn
for-
out edits, yeah.
but-
And even stuff that you saw in like Hereditary, where like there's shit just in the background on the walls if you're looking for it. You know
and
what
that's
I mean?
where somebody who's very cynical could just pick this apart and be like, oh, that's from that movie, oh, that's from that movie, oh, that's from that movie,
Yeah.
oh, that's from that movie. But I mean,
It wears its influences on its sleeve, but
Yeah.
it does it so well that you don't care,
Yeah.
or I didn't care.
I didn't care as much. I mean, maybe I was the slightest bit more critical because of the aspect of the source material, but that's where, once again, I'm not beholden to the source material.
Well,
This
and
is
I'm
very
not at
much-
all. I'm
this is-
completely
yeah.
detached from it,
this
having
is
never read it.
very much its own thing, in a lot of ways.
So let's get into the acting then,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Because I enjoyed the acting in the film, save for one of the performances, and it's actually
I was with you about it,
so
too.
it's the actor that plays the father. I'm actually a big fan of this actor. I got to know him. He plays the main love interest in the Mindy Project, and I watched like the first couple seasons of the Mindy Project before it moved to Hulu or wherever the hell it moved 2 years ago, before it eventually stopped. But he was a really I was introduced to him, and I was introduced to Ike Barinholtz, the comedian, from that show, and they're hilarious. And Ike Barinholtz was has been involved in so many different things, including having I believe guest spot as one of the stormtroopers that couldn't hit anything in the Mandalorian
They never
episode.
can.
Yeah. But anyway, I could be getting that wrong. I hope not, because I know Adam Pally, who was also from Mindy Project, was one of those stormtroopers. I might be getting it wrong that Ike was. Ike did writing, though. Anyway, it's a complete side note. This actor was from the Mindy Project, and I feel like everyone else really nailed their parts, but he did a good job. But I feel like if we had an actor that could have really gone there emotionally at a couple of parts, I feel like it would have played a lot better.
Although I feel like they wrote him to be like he's masking his feelings.
They
and
wrote him to be
so-
masked, but by the end, he had a moment to really shine,
And
like
he
really
didn't-
cut loose and let it
Yeah,
shine.
and
But
it didn't
it
hit
never
me.
got there.
Yeah.
It never got there. So like that was the only issue with me.
Yeah.
But anyway, other than that, everyone did a really wonderful job. The two daughters
Both of the sisters, man,
did an
were
excellent job. Yeah,
very, very
the Dave
solid.
Desmalchin and his wife did an excellent job.
Ireland, although they're not in like an immense amount of the movie, so
Right.
don't approach this. And this is very much the story of these two sisters and dealing with their own personal grief, and then the escalation of everything around them as this
Yep.
thing that feeds on
fear.
fear. Yeah, I know. And I was just thinking for a second, I'm like,
Fear in children.
Yeah, and I'm like, does that sound like another Stephen King villain to you? I can't really remember if that was in the short story or not. You know, I mean, like getting them scared so they taste
Is this
a
a
little
version
sweeter.
of Pennywise, I wonder? Who knows with King?
Yeah,
Could have been.
yeah. I mean, I'm trying to remember from the source material if that was even a thing in the short or not. Because
Well-
I can't. It's been a minute since I've read it, so I don't remember if that was like. I mean, it is children that it goes after. You know,
Yeah.
the three kids and Billings' kids in the original short. But in any event, once again, this is very much beyond another level of the tower. It's its own damn thing, man, in a lot of ways, and positively for me at the end of the day, really.
Well, and you touched on another thing, which was the sound design.
Mm-hmm.
The sound design was phenomenal. It has to be in horror movies nowadays, especially these supernatural horror movies. A lot of the scares are sold in sound, and
Especially with
They knew that.
PG-13 horror like
Yep,
this, where
100%.
it's more so just like
'Cause,
build
yeah,
the
it's not
dread
the
as
gory-
opposed
it's
to
not gory,
show it. Yeah,
right?
exactly. It's
Can't be.
as far from Terrifier 2 as you can get. You know? I mean,
yeah,
come on, right?
on that spectrum, yes.
Yeah. Although, but it does go for it, and I will attest to the fact that some of the peril that characters are put in this, I thought really did, push the limits, man, and I was impressed with that.
I agree. Yeah, there was one scene in particular where a character's attacked, and I was just like, Jesus Christ, what the wow.
Yeah.
That's not what you normally see in a horror movie,
Yeah.
even,
Mhm.
like it's, yeah. So all of that was really good. The last thing that we should probably touch on is the effects.
Yeah.
We did touch on the fact that there's not a ton of gore because
Mhm.
it is a PG-13 horror movie.
But it is
But
a creature movie.
It is a creature movie, and I did mention CG. There is a lot of CG used, but again, I have never, not that I've never been, but I am not usually the person that is going to harp on bad CG. I let a lot of CG pass.
I do too.
So to me, I thought this CG was great. I thought I was in it. It didn't pull me out at any point. The creature always looked like it was in the actual scene.
Yeah, and it
like,
also doesn't really linger on it too often.
No,
aside from a
it
few
does
bits,
it
you know.
smartly. Yeah,
very
yeah.
much so. You know,
Agreed.
because there's so much like just there's a little bit of light, and then you know you can only see eyes, and then glimpses of what this thing actually is, and so yeah. And I dug the design too. You know, I did genuinely, man.
I will say that when you get to the more full reveal
yeah, in the
of
third
what
act.
it is, you kind of get Smile vibes, but Smile did it just a lot better.
Well, and also the fact that the guys who adapted this were behind the Quiet Place, and so you get a little bit of that vibe too.
Yep,
if
there's
I'm
a little
gonna
bit
be
of
fair
Quiet Place
about it.
vibe, yep.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it's still really cool, and I was like, because I saw Jeff Johns' review ahead of time, I was waiting for it to start to dip and get into territory that we've seen before. It just never got there for me. I enjoyed the movie the whole way through. Yes, the first third is like really engaging and it really brings you into the world, and boom. I think your ability to buy into the CG creature from that point on is what's going to determine if you like this movie or not.
Yeah, and also
Straight up. I mean,
don't-
that's the way. If
Yeah,
you don't
and-
like heavily CG creatures to be your horror villain, if you didn't like Come Play for that reason alone, I wouldn't expect much of a different response out of this one from you.
Yeah, and also don't expect like very deep sort of explanation about the creature or the nature of it. Or,
No, I kind
mean,
of like that, though. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, again, I'm not the kind of person that needs to know how this thing or why this thing is.
Yeah.
You know,
you
what
get
I
a
mean?
little bit of exposition
If
from
it's
Merritt
cool and
Ireland's
scary,
character at one point, but
fuck it. Like,
Yeah.
the less we know, the better, because the easier it is to bring back for more.
yeah, and I mean the trope of the boogeyman, or at least the concept of the boogeyman, has been around for God knows how long, and so for that reason, I mean, I can be okay with this sort of different turn. The one thing that I do have to warn again, though, is that people who just adore that short story, you really. That was a story that was about a father who was grieving the loss of his children, and that's pretty much it. This is a story of two sisters. It is admittedly more with her high school dynamic and everything.
And they are dealing
it's a
with
little more
grief.
it's a little more geared at the teen
Sure.
horror crowd.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and yet I don't fault it for that. Just be prepared. I guess be prepared. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Scar? All right,
Yeah.
cool. So there you go, guys. I think that's about as much as we can say about this movie without getting into spoiler territory. I think we'll probably skip a spoiler review on this one just because, there's not a ton to talk about, and I think I'd rather you guys just go and see it.
Yeah.
Come back and give us your thoughts, though, once you see it.
Yeah.
I had a blast with this one, though.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Boogeyman
I really
was
enjoyed it.
great. I was
Yeah.
worried it was going to be good and then go downhill. Never went downhill for me. Was there the whole time. Loved it.
Yeah, this is one that I would say go out to a theater to see because of the fact that if we're gonna see, especially like King fans, if you go in with an open mind and think it's and just understand it's gonna be something different. If it was originally supposed to be on Hulu, man, and they decided to go theatrical with it, it needs some
If
support.
they had, I would have been like, why? Like Hellraiser, like Prey.
Yeah.
These movies should have been on the big screen. I would have said the same thing about this.
Well, also Evil Dead Rise was supposed to be on a streamer, and I was able to
They were
look at the
smart enough
success
to do
that
that.
they've seen.
I could see this. I could see this making a lot of money.
Yeah.
Not Evil Dead Rise money,
No, not anything like that.
but probably I could see it getting to 30 to 40.
I mean, who knows? It could be the next Lights Out or Smile or something like that.
Could be, dude.
And those movies made bonkers bucks, especially
I'm
on like a
telling you,
lower
creatures,
to mid
creatures
level.
in the closet,
like, sort of
creatures
budget.
under the bed do well when you
Yeah.
do them well.
Yeah, and so you'll be able to see
You
other
treat them
Stephen
right,
King
they'll
adap-
treat you right.
Yeah, I'll treat you right. But yeah, if you go out and support this, I mean, if you want to see other King properties adapted, this needs some support because his adaptations haven't seen an immense amount of box office success beyond it.
Jesus, that's the.
It's
I'm
true,
sorry,
though. It's
forgive
true.
me, but this movie needs your support when you're talking about the guy that's literally had every single one of his stories
No, there's
adapted in some way,
No,
shape, or form.
there's a handful that haven't,
handful.
especially on the short.
How many
story
has he
standpoint.
made? He's made like what, 70
There's-
stories?
there's still
and
some-
there's 5 to 6 that
No,
haven't been
there's
optioned at this
No,
point.
there's hundreds, dude. Hundreds. If you're in, this
Okay.
was based on a short story.
Okay.
He has hundreds.
That's what
of
I'm
short
saying. At
stories.
this point, I feel
Yeah.
like everything of his should have been or would have been optioned.
Oh, believe me, it's been optioned maybe, but definitely not made into things.
Okay.
And so that's why I'm like,
Alright.
if you want to see some more obscure stuff, this had never been adapted on the big screen.
No,
you
that's
know?
fair,
It's just
and,
dollar
yeah,
babies.
okay.
And so if you want
Fair.
other things to be adapted, like they're trying to make the Monkey right now. And that's
Was this the best adaptation of this story that you've seen, or were any of the
Well, it
Dollar
was-
Babies better?
It depends if you want faithful to the source material
Okay,
or not,
okay.
and that's where it gets tough because
So there
I've
was
seen
a Dollar Baby that was more faithful that you would recommend to those people. If so,
there's
I would
so-
say recommend it to them.
There's so many of them. I mean, if you search on YouTube, you can probably find the original one that was released on VHS tape, which I own.
Oh, wow.
But there's so many others. It's tough because of with the rights issue, they're supposed to only be showcased at festivals. And
Well, as long as
but
they're not making money, they
I've
can
seen
be on
like
YouTube.
5 or 6 different adaptations of this because it's still available as a Dollar Baby. It's one of those that many student and amateur filmmakers have taken a crack at, and just about all of them have done a very faithful sort of approach. This one is a drastic detour.
Well, the faithful approach is the cheaper approach for sure.
It is, yeah, just a guy sitting in a, sitting in a room
Just
with a
two
shrink.
dudes
Yeah,
in a
just 2
room.
dudes talking. Yeah, pretty much it.
That's what King does well. That's why I'm
It
telling
is.
you, we
Dialogue,
still need
man.
to do the short
Dialogue.
words. The man in black talking
Gunslinger
to
palaver. Yeah. So, but in any event, guys, that's our thoughts on The Boogeyman, which is in theaters this Friday, June
Yep.
2nd, and it's decent counter programming the Spider-Verse. So I mean, yeah, if you want
There you
something
go.
drastically different, then this will be at your disposal.
I definitely think it's worth your time and worth your energy and worth your money, you guys. So The Boogeyman, if you're anything like me, go and enjoy this one. Go have a good time with your significant other. Cuddle up close to one another
Bring your
and
kids.
scream. Yeah, I would say leave the kids at home for this one. PG-13 though it may be.
Yeah.
If I was 11, 12, or 13 watching this, I still would absolutely have had a nightmare or two about it.
Especially with a young kid being, totally traumatized.
100%.
in this. So,
100%.
yeah.
So, thank you guys very much for watching. Thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the channel the way that you do. We greatly appreciate it. Until next time, you guys, I've been Cecil Laird.
Gracias, Jaime and Fuego.
Stay tuned because we're going to be doing reviews of The Blackening, and, well, I'll be doing that review. I was the only one that got to see the screening, but going to have a good time talking about that one. And then we're going to also be doing a review of The Flash on the channel because there is horror elements to that, and we have done reviews of comic book movies in the past, and I've been looking forward to this one for a very, very long time.
Same.
So, yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. Until next time, I've been Cecil Laird.
And once again, Fuego.
Did we do that already?
We did, yeah.
Damn it. Remember, guys, stay scared.